Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close Up, post-debate campaigning, how Republican candidates are hoping to boost their national profile by hitting the campaign trail in Iowa. And fighting fentanyl, why this Iowa couple says candidates' focus on border security is not enough, the answers they want from presidential hopefuls. And a county auditor election finds unusual spotlight, why the Warren County race set records.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning and welcome to Close Up. I'm KCCI Chief Political Reporter Amanda Rooker. Well, the latest Iowa poll in the GOP presidential race comes from last month. It's the Des Moines Register, NBC News, and Mediacom Iowa poll, and it shows South Carolina Senator Tim Scott is in third place among potential Republican Iowa caucus goers. Former President Donald Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis continue to be the only two Republican candidates with double-digit support. I asked Scott about that poll after a campaign stop in Oskaloosa Thursday. In our one-on-one interview, he tells me how he plans to find a path forward in Iowa. Looking at the latest polls, Donald Trump still has a sizable lead on you. You're still behind Ron DeSantis. You have been coming up in the polls in Iowa. But what do you need to do specifically to gain more momentum here?
I think more of the same. But what we've learned is that an optimistic, positive message anchored in conservatism actually works, especially when you have a backbone. The second thing we're realizing is that my Parents' Bill of Rights is resonating throughout the state. Focusing on empowering parents and protecting kids is absolutely essential. I'm not sure if it's a smartphone or the locker room or the classroom, but all three is really important areas where we can protect our kids. As we do so, I think not the polls, but the people are speaking loud and clear that we have the same values. That's our value proposition, is that in America, all things are possible, but it starts with protecting our kids.
And specifically on that Empowering Parents Plan, the agenda you just launched, one piece of that, you say you want to make big tech do more to protect kids online. Specifically on that, how do you actually control the companies and how do you actually get kids to comply?
Well, first thing you do is give parents the right to consent to their kids being on social media platforms, number one, especially under the age of 13. Number two, I have a bill in Congress that I would sign as president that says you should know where the origin of your app comes from. 3 out of the 5 biggest apps are run by the Chinese. So what we want to do is make sure that you know the origin of your app. That bill is strong and helpful and resonating on both sides of the aisle, and frankly, parents love the concept of having the ability to know where their information of their child is going. So if you want to break the backs of the Chinese spying on your kids, one of the ways that we do that is by parental notification and by making sure that you know the origin of that app.
Iowa is sending state troopers to the southern border. They're going to be there through October. You've talked a lot about border security when it comes to stopping the flow of fentanyl in our country. But I want to talk, aside from border security, there is a demand for fentanyl in our country. How do you stop that demand?
Well, there's a scripture that says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And so one of the things we have to do is focus on creating opportunities while we restore hope. One of the ways that we do that is by making sure that, as Governor Reynolds has done here, every child in every zip code has access to a quality education. That goes a long way to restoring hope. We're also in the midst of a mental health crisis as a nation. And one of the things that I would challenge us to do, and you'll see it reflected in my Empowering Parents Plan, is the importance of making sure that we are dealing with the mental health crisis that we're seeing in this nation, especially amongst our young folks. We've seen a 30% increase since COVID on parents taking their kids to the emergency room because of a mental health episode. So focusing resources and attention on that issue will be really helpful.
We have had some trial dates set for Trump's 2024 legal issues, kind of clashing with the campaign trail. What does that mean for you as a candidate? How do you address that when you have questions from Iowans that want to hear about that as someone that's his competitor?
Well, 1 out of probably every 50 questions has to do with Trump, except for from media, where 1 out of 2 questions has to do with Trump. So the truth is that the people in the room very rarely want to have a conversation about a politician's future. They want to have a conversation about their kids' future. I'm going to stay focused where the people are.
And Scott, not the only one in Iowa. Other candidates are also hoping to find momentum here. Presidential candidate Ryan Binkley is working to grow his name recognition and his long shot bid for the White House. The Texas businessman and pastor did not qualify for the first debate. He's currently polling at 0% in the latest Des Moines Register NBC News Mediacom Iowa poll. The Binkley campaign does say he has received 1% in 2 national polls and 2 Iowa polls. They say all 4 meet the requirements of the Republican National Committee. His campaign also says Binkley has surpassed the 50,000 unique donors needed to qualify for the second debate. KCCI's Ophelia Jacobson sat down with Binkley and has why he's betting on Iowa to help him gain national momentum.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I would just like to start off, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for president.
Well, thank you, Ophelia, for having me here. I'm a businessman and I'm a pastor from Dallas, Texas, and so my company is Mergers and Acquisitions. I co-founded Generational about 20 years ago, and we help middle market companies grow and expand, and we do software engineering, overall consulting. And so that's grown to about 400 employees, and then I'm a pastor. My wife and I, we have 5 kids, but about 10 years ago, we started a church in Dallas, Texas. So we've been doing business and ministry side by side, really our whole married life of 24 years. And with this thought came to me, really in dreams, to run for the office of presidency about 8 years ago. And just like you would if you had those, you'd be like, where did that come from? But just praying through it and feeling a message for our country, we really felt now's the time to share with our country this message that we need a renewal at a heart level and an economic level in our country. We need a revival of sorts. And so that's what we're sharing with Iowa, and that's what we're sharing with America right now.
How do you plan to kind of bring up your polling numbers among likely caucus goers over the next few months?
Well, we're talking about real issues. And so everybody's hitting this inflation thing. It's $700 more a month for the average family right now than it was 2 years ago. So our policy that I'm talking about economically is about what's happening to their pocketbooks today, but also what's important to landowners, farmers today. So I am the only candidate standing for landowners in Iowa that I know of. We're coming out with really a saving and fighting for the heartland movement, and we are actually hosting a virtual rally on September 7th because so many landowners are being infringed on their rights, their Fifth Amendment rights, because of private pipelines coming through their land. These are not public utilities, they're private utilities. And so I really believing that we need to stand for the Fifth Amendment here, stand for landowners, and people are resonating with this because they're tired of people coming and surveying on their land without due process. And it's time that we stand for something, and I haven't heard enough politicians talk about this, so I'm different in that area. I'm believing that we protect landowners' rights here in America.
And you spent well over $500,000 here in Iowa on ads and just trying to get your message out. What's that game strategy look like, and has it been working over the past couple of months?
Absolutely. In fact, we launched some new ads recently just called Going Beyond 46, which means more than just beyond the 46th president, Joe Biden, going beyond the 46% that we've been winning, reaching into new areas. It's time. You know, if we do not connect to new voters, we're going to be relegated to the past. The Republican Party has got a great message, but not great messengers. We haven't communicated that we care a whole lot. And so we're doing that because we have to inspire our next generation. We have to tell them that we care. We have to tell them we care about their jobs, we care about their future, and that's what I want to dive into.
Looking forward to the second debate. What strides are you making to qualify for that debate, to get on that stage and be able to join that conversation?
Well, thank you. There's 2 qualifications, 50,000 donors, and then 3% in polling nationwide and in here in Iowa and New Hampshire. So we are doing, we've already hit the 50,000 donor requirement. We've had a big upsurge in donors, and so that's great. We have to get polling, so we're sharing our message that's connecting with Iowans and all over America. So we're getting more national press now. You know, we started small. I'm not a big brand name. I'm not a lifelong politician, and I'm not a billionaire. But at the same time, we've been on Fox Business a few times, CNN, a few other national media, and they're starting to hear this message. So it's time for this to be heard at a larger scale. And so Iowans are connecting to it. So our goal is to get to 3% and to be there.
After a standout performance in the first Republican debate, former Vice President Mike Pence is also campaigning in Iowa. We caught up with him Wednesday in Ankeny. That's when he defended an argument he made on that debate stage about America's role in helping Ukraine.
And let me be very clear on this. I think I said this in Milwaukee. Anybody that says that we can't solve our problems here in America and be the leader of the free world has got a pretty small view of the greatest nation on earth.
Ankeny, Pence also made stops in Centerville, Fairfield, Mount Pleasant, and Fort Madison. Next on Close Up, fighting fentanyl. Why an Iowa couple who lost their son says border security alone won't solve the fentanyl crisis. And a record-setting election, how replacing a retiring county auditor turned into an unprecedented political fight in Warren County. Last Thursday, people all across the globe observed International Overdose Awareness Day, coming together for the world's largest annual campaign to end overdoses and to remember those who've died. But one Central Iowa family is making a plea for politicians to change public understanding around the fentanyl crisis. Derek and Kathy Kidd lost their teenage son to fentanyl. Now, they want answers and action from the Biden administration and other presidential candidates to stop the demand for fentanyl in America.
There is a lot of focus on the border now with the supply side of things, which needs to happen. We have to stop as much as we can from coming in, but the truth of the matter is they're never going to stop at all. So we appreciate the focus there, but there needs to be a lot more done. The demand is still there. So if we don't focus on why people are choosing to do these things, then they're going to find the drug in some way, shape, or form. It's going to be there.
I know you've mentioned that you've been able to talk with Vivek Ramaswamy, Perry Johnson, Asa Hutchinson. Mm-hmm. What have those conversations been like, and have they given you any hope?
Conversations are great. Talking about it is great, but if you're not actively making a change, you can talk about it all you want. So, I mean, we talk about it daily and people are still dying daily. So until people that actually have the power to make the change get involved, it doesn't matter. And right now there's a lot of really great candidates out there, but none of them are in a position to make a change right now. It's great that they are aware of it, that they're talking on it, but until they can act upon it and make changes, it's just conversation. It's just political points, you know?
Our current administration, my wife mentioned from the top down, our current administration has completely dropped the ball on this in all aspects. This should be blasted, and there should be reports on this constantly in regards to the drug problem that we have and the mental health issues that we have and how we're going to combat it. All the states got a settlement here a while back, millions and millions of dollars, and we have no idea how all those funds are being spent. But we do know that we have some mental health facilities that are shutting down when they're probably more in need of that now than ever. There's money to be spent. There are things that can be done. That's not my place to say where it goes or to understand how it's being spent. I just know that it's probably not being utilized in the best way possible.
Mm-hmm. When you say current administration, do you mean federal, state, both?
I will say this, the Biden administration. We are not getting what we need, and kids are dying because things are not being addressed and done. I haven't heard I haven't heard a whole lot about education. I haven't heard a whole lot about getting into the school systems and the communities and having discussions and having real conversations about this.
And I know you talked a lot about the border and how a lot of the conversations around fentanyl kind of stem from the border and how an open border, they claim, is bringing in more fentanyl into our country, which is killing our kids and our citizens. But in the debate last week, fentanyl was mentioned 12 times, and a lot of those times it was around the topic of the border and border security. What's the danger of, if you think there is a danger, of just talking about fentanyl when it comes to the border and nothing, in no other time?
It's tunnel vision. I mean, and unless there's going to be a plan put in place to do anything to shut that border, to control some of it, again, it doesn't matter.
We can talk about fentanyl on the border all we want at these debates, but the general public still doesn't understand the dangers behind it. They don't understand the problems that we're facing in this country, the mental health problems, and how this is affecting our children, why our children are taking these drugs, how they're getting them, how easy it is to get them. The general public has no idea. That's the administration's fault.
The kids started a nonprofit called Become Their Voice, and while it started out as a place to help grieving families, it's now become an educational tool as well. According to the Iowa Attorney General's office, deaths associated with drugs in our state are on the rise, up from 350 deaths in 2019 to 470 in 2021. That is a 34% increase in just 1 year. Still to come on Close Up, a record-setting special election last week in Warren County, the race to replace the county auditor, and what that vote may mean for the largely conservative county. Back in May, Tracy Vanderlinden retired after 25 years as Warren County Auditor. She was the only Democrat to hold elected office in Warren County. Many recommended Vanderlinden's longtime deputy, Kim Sheets, to replace her. But in June, the three-member Republican-controlled Board of Supervisors instead appointed David Whipple. Whipple had little prior government experience and had made several social media posts after the 2020 election under the hashtag #StopTheSteal. Warren County Democrats then got the signatures to petition a special election for that auditor's position. Republicans filed the challenge, but a Warren County commission, which included Whipple, unanimously certified that there were enough valid signatures to hold a vote. Tuesday, Warren County voters chose Sheets almost 2-1, and it was a record turnout for a special election in Warren County. KCCI's Todd Magel talked with both Sheets and Whipple after Tuesday's vote about what a Democratic win in a largely Republican county could mean.
The victory means to me that we were able to show the country that we can have good government, we can have good elections, we can have clean elections, and that the people they want good, clean campaigns. You know, it doesn't have to be a smear campaign. It doesn't have to be ugly. We can represent all people. Yeah, and they've spoken. You're always going to have those opponents that may have extreme thoughts or theories, different things like that. But people want, as I said, good government. They want people to represent everybody, to be transparent, to know that they can trust their leaders and get appropriate answers to help clear out the misinformation that's out there. Politics have kind of ruled the news lately in different things, and of course, crazy things make news. So I think they're excited to have a level head and calmness and just get the job done. They want to be able to approach their elected officials, talk about their concerns in a reasonable manner, and know that they're being listened to, that any solutions or concerns that they would have would be addressed. I was told that this is a historical turnout, and again, it just confirms that again, that people want good government. People want people in their government that can work for all the people and represent all the people, the rural people, the city people, Republicans and Democrats, because when it all comes down to it, we're all one community. We're all the same people. Well, it's been a learning experience, and I've always been the type of person to take on a challenge, and I take on a challenge with an attitude, okay, what can we learn from this? I've not worked on the campaign side at this level before, so I've learned a lot. I've had a lot of support. I am so grateful and thankful in that aspect. There are good days and bad days, but we work through it. We get a plan, and once a plan's there, then we can structure through that. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, there were good days and bad days, but in the end, I've never been afraid of hard work, and the hard work paid off, and now I'm really ready to work for the county.
The Warren County residents signed a petition to take this decision that the board made to appoint me as the interim into their own hands, and they spoke about it. It was a very small turnout, I think, 7,500 electors out of 39,000, a little more than that of Warren County. So I expected a larger turnout.
So it's just been a few months, but it's been just this wild ride. I don't know if you've experienced that or not, or sort of the on both sides, people upset, people making accusations, accusing you of things, being accused of things. What does it tell you that this vote came out this way based on all of that controversy?
I'm kind of new to politics and everything, so I didn't really have much experience with campaigning and that sort of thing. I think my opponent did a great job of that. She was supported by a lot of people, even from outside this county, to run a great campaign, to do a lot of social media stuff and advertising and TV and that sort of thing. So, I mean, I gave it my best, I think, and I just was a little bit disappointed in the turnout. That's really where I'm standing with that. I think those people that met me realize who I am, and I thought I got in here for that very short window, and I thought I did a great job, and I think the people that were standing behind me saw that. And it's unfortunate, that people have their opinion based on, a Facebook post or whatever, that this is the way they're going to judge a person. I got a very short window to do something here, and I felt like I made a pretty good difference on the few things that I did do. There's a long road ahead for whoever takes this. Well, of course, it's Kim Sheets now, but she's going to need a lot of support, and I hope she gets it, because there's a lot to do in this little tiny Warren County auditor's office. These Facebook posts from 3 and 4 years ago were quite effective for the opponent, and they used it to their advantage. But you know, the truth is we've been over that. You know, I don't deny any elections. Matter of fact, I put the most secure election this county's ever seen together just now for my own. And I think I got a lot of comments on how impressive it was. In fact, right before you walked in, I was just congratulating the couple of clerks that are in there. They did a fantastic job for only 2 years of experience. They put together 170 poll workers on this election right here. They rented 22 different locations. We had 40,000 ballots in preparation to make sure we didn't run out of ballots and that sort of thing. And so it was amazing to me to watch the talent and the skill that these two new individuals and clerks in the office had. They did a great job. It wasn't anything I set out in 2023 to do, is become the auditor, interim appointed. But once I got in here, I felt more qualified to stay here and do it. I'm quite surprised that I'm not still here doing it, but you know, it was a learning experience and I enjoyed the entire thing, and there's a lot of work to do in this, and my advice is that the people in the county get a little bit more involved with their politics, with their local politics. We've been around and around on the Facebook posts. It did unfortunately have something to do with you know, a lot of people making a decision about who it is that we're going to vote for. I don't know what to say more than that. I've already said in the past that I'm not an election denier. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a regular guy.
And the Warren County vote will be certified Wednesday, September 6th. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Have a great day.